So now let's take a look at creating an empty web project using Visual Studio Code. Now this Visual Studio Code is a tool. It's cross-platform, Linux, OS X, as well as Windows, that can be used to edit and even debug ASP.NET applications on these different operating systems. So I want to show you how it works for those of you that are working on operating systems that aren't Windows. We're going to spend most of the course in Visual Studio, but most of it's going to be in the actual editing of code and configuration files and such, so that you should be able to follow along whether you're using VS Code or Visual Studio. If you're already using Visual Studio, you can skip to the next video if you'd like, but I think there's going to be a couple of details here you'll find interesting and will want to watch. First thing I'm going to do is open up an instance of Visual Studio Code just in an empty folder. We're in a folder called The World because that's what I'm going to call the project that we're going to create. And because I'm used to full IDEs, not just pretty much text editors like Visual Studio Code is, I'm going to come over here to the File menu and look for the New Project option. The New Project option, where is that? Oh yeah, it doesn't exist. This assumes that a lot of the sort of operations you're going to be doing, you're going to go ahead and use a console for. So let's open up a console. We're in our directory and we want to use a tool to build a boilerplate project for us. And that tool that we're going to use is an open source tool that's used in a variety of different scenarios, and it's called Yeoman. The Yeoman has a number of generators that can be installed in it to create code for a wide variety of scenarios across different development environments. It's used widely in Node, it's used widely in Ruby on Rails, and we're going to go ahead and use it in ASP.NET. We have Node installed on our machine, so we're going to go ahead and use the Node Package Manager to install Yeoman for us. So we can just say npm install yo, and then I'm going to put -g to say go ahead and install it machine-wide or globally. Now that Yeoman is installed, let's do the same thing for generator ASP.NET. This is a set of generators for Yeoman that have been developed by the Microsoft ASP.NET 5 team to allow you to create projects for ASP.NET. And like before, I'm going to use the -g to install it globally. Now that the generators are installed, we can actually use them. We can say yo and then just say ASP.NET, and then we'll know to find the ASP.NET generator that was installed as part of generator-ASP.NET. This is going to give us a choice of what kind of application to install. An empty application, console, web without membership or authorization, a web API application, a Nancy ASP.NET application, class library, or even just a unit test project. For us, we're going to create the basic web application, the one without membership or authorization, for a fairly simple web template. And I'm going to call it The World. And it's gone ahead and created it. And it's given you some information here, like go to the directory and then use another tool we haven't really talked about called DNU. DNU will load up all the dependencies. It will fulfill all the NuGet packages that are required. And then you can see DNX run or DNX web for running these web projects. But before we do that, let's go back to code for a minute. In code, we can see that what it generated was a project JSON file as well as a number of other files, including controllers and views like you might expect in a web project, and then a web root that contains some of the client-side assets like CSS, images, and JavaScript for our project. But let's look at this project JSON just for a minute. We're going to delve much deeper into this as we go forward, but I want you to see that now this project JSON has the dependencies, and these are the packages, the NuGet packages that are required to make this work. Has a set of commands that includes how it wants to necessarily be loaded up. These are commands that can be executed using the DNX command, DNX, and then the name of these commands to do these certain things. And in this case, this is the self-hosting for ASP.NET. Includes the frameworks that are going to be supported. In this case, it's going to be the DNX 451, which is the standard .NET framework, and then the DNX Core 5.0, which is the current version of the .NET Core framework. And then it has a couple of other things like what files to exclude on publishing, and then a set of scripts. Now, by default, there is a pre-published script that goes ahead and executes certain scripts like npm install to get all npm packages, bower install to get all client-side packages, gulp clean and gulp min to go ahead and actually build the project for us. But we're going to talk about what this means a lot more as time goes on. Let's take this project without really looking too much at the code and go back to the console. Here's that same project we saw. Let's first use the DNU to go ahead and get all of the NuGet packages. This is going to look at those set of dependencies we saw in the package.json and make sure we have all the packages required. Now this is a lot more packages than we saw because of course some packages rely on other packages, and this is going to install a lot of the different pieces of the framework that are required. Now the core.NET framework that we downloaded didn't necessarily have a lot of these assemblies that we're going to eventually need. And because of the way the dependencies are managed, it's actually installing a large number of these assemblies for us. Now that we've gotten all the assemblies, let's go ahead and use DNX to try to run this web command so we can actually run this as a web server. We can see it started listening. We should be able to go ahead and just open up a browser. And I know by default what they're actually listening for is on port 5000 of localhost. And this is the application, the boilerplate that the Yeoman generator generated for us. Included Bootstrap and included some JavaScript that did certain things like enabling the carousel to work, some different links about concepts. So this is somewhat messy, but a completely running application for us that we can start actually working with. Let's see what this looks like in Visual Studio next.